Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. Now I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. Now, a couple weeks ago, I went and checked this movie out. And right afterwards, in my live reaction, I talked about how I really liked it, but I really needed to sit and think about it, because it's a very thought-provoking kind of a movie. But very laugh-out-loud funny, and a lot of stuff that I was like, I'm digging. But this movie throws a crazy twist at you that you don't see coming, that kind of knocks you off your center for a little bit. But once you regain it, oh man, this movie is good. So good that when I saw it the second time, I was like, man, this movie is so good. However, that doesn't mean that it's gonna be for everybody. There were some people who walked out of the theater that were like, what the F did I just watch? Now you're probably wondering, Corey, what the F movie are you talking about? Well, the Seaman ain't gonna leave you hanging. Pull up a chair, take a seat. I'm about to dive into my non-spoiler review for Sorry to Bother You. So, before we even get into what the story is, I guess we'll do my bad. The Seaman likes to roll bad, then good. I don't really personally think anything bad about this movie, but as I mentioned just before, there were people who did not like this movie at all in both screenings that I saw. Now, they were the drastic minority. It was 2 or 3 people total, and at the time, all of us kind of looked around and were like, really? Like, I get it. It's shocking, and it throws you off, but like, dude, like, if you're following the movie, like, you should not be walking out feeling that way. But I did. I saw multiple people go like, what the F was that? And look, I guess that's a negative. I put it more as a disclaimer. If you see the trailer and you're like, this looks like an interesting satirical comedy, which it is. Very well done social commentary kind of satire. But it goes to some really absurd places in the last act that you could never see coming in the trailer. So make that your warning. If you're not down for something that's like really out there and kind of, whoa, where'd that go? This movie might not be for you. But if you're up for something interesting and that's very rewarding at the end, you gotta go check out Sorry to Bother You. So there you go. That's my bad. But now it's just all good, baby. So let's talk about what the movie is about. The movie follows Lakeith Stanfield's Cassius Green, a young black kid from Oakland who gets a job at a telemarketing company. And while at the telemarketing company, Cash starts to learn that there is a way that you can move up real fast. And living in his uncle's garage, he is very intrigued about making money, as are all of us, right? We all want to make that cash. And he sees a way to do it, and he's actually really quite good at the telemarketing once he figures it out. And thus, he starts to climb the ladder. But that brings the main kind of focal conversation of this movie, which is only like one of many. But the kind of idea of selling out, and how much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice to get ahead, and how much of yourself do you need to keep to still be you and not really completely sell out. And you get that from Stanfield. Stanfield's character certainly deals with that the most, where his friends are all kind of the people that are like, nah, man, I stand by my guns and I don't want to sell out. So that's basically the concept of the movie. And it does. It's really funny. It's laugh out loud funny a lot of times in the movie. And it does some really interesting things. And it has some really, really great conversations going on in it. Now, before we get into the movie, though, we got to talk about the true star of this film, and that is newcomer in both writing and directing, Boots Riley. Oh my gosh, I mean, you watch this movie and you're like, wow, Boots Riley is the big winner, because this should hopefully propel a career that will be, that'll make provocative and thought-provoking movies. I hope that's what happens. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with Boots Riley, much like myself was, I saw an interview with him in the cast back around Sundance for IMDb that Kevin Smith did. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, so naturally I saw the interview. And in it, you kind of get a little bit about Boots Riley's background. And he himself started out in telemarketing, and he claims, I think he either said 24 or 26, he kind of had a midlife crisis, and kind of asked himself, like, what am I doing at this telemarketing job? And went out and formed this rap group called The Coup or The Coop. I don't know if the P is silent or not. and he said it was very good for that point in a time. You know, it was a time when everybody wanted a rap group from Oakland, and thus, you know, got to do a lot of work on a bunch of soundtracks from that. And you know, Riley always had a film kind of a background. And he basically told Smith, I was just waiting for an opportunity for someone to take a chance on me. Well, that came with Sorry to Bother You, and at least from a content perspective, it's a home run. We'll see how much it makes when it's finally said and done. I actually haven't been looking at the box office numbers at all for this. But, you know, we'll see where it ends up. But from a content standpoint, this movie is stellar. And it is definitely going to come up award season. You mark my words. People will certainly be talking, for nothing else, Boots Riley. But Lakeith Stanfield should definitely be in conversations, and the movie should too. So now, with all that out of the way and kind of understanding who the director is, also, he describes the movie in the interview, and I think it's the actual perfect way to describe the film. He describes it as an absurdist dark comedy with magical realism and science fiction inspired by the world of telemarketing. And that totally sums up what this film is. And I love it because you got to think about it for a second and be like, huh. Like, even after you see the movie, you look at it and you go, wait, yeah, all right, it's there. The movie makes you do that too, and I love that. So let's get into what Riley really does well from a directing and filmmaking standpoint. And the first thing is, I think he gets the absolute most out of his actors. Nobody is phoning it in here. Everybody shows up and delivers really solid performances. Whether it's Lakeith Stanfield or Tessa Thompson or Omari Hardwick, who are your three leading physical characters, or David Cross or Patton Oswalt, who are your two white voices. We'll get there in a little bit. But all of them bring it. But even the smaller roles, you know, guys like Jermaine Fowler and Terry Crews and Michael X. Summers and Danny Glover and Stephen Yeun, they all have drastically smaller roles than our kind of front and center folks. And they all bring it. Like, there is no bad acting in this movie anywhere. I enjoy all the performances from the people who get legit screen time. And I think that's really, one, I mean, it says a lot about the actors, but two, that always tells me a lot about a director. I look at that like a sports team, right? Like, the head coach has a lot to do with how good a team is. Yes, the talent has to drive the car, but the coach, you know, or rather, I guess, like, the talent kind of makes up the car, but the coach has got to kind of drive it and lead it and get the most out of his players. Same with the director, and you definitely see that here. The camera work also really, really solid. You know, it's real solid cinematography, and what's real nice is that Riley does some interesting tricks, both from a camera perspective, but also with what you're physically watching in a scene. You know, he does these things, and the reason he's able to get away with them is because his main character, Cassius Green, is kind of completely self-aware. So it allows him to do these things where, like, if you were watching in the trailer, when he gets on a call with somebody, all of a sudden he legitimately drops into the room that they're in. And you get some really, really funny situations from that. You know, he drops in on a man eating dinner, and as soon as he says his name, the guy hangs up. He drops in on a woman in the middle of having sex and physically falls into the room. And it's a jarring, but kind of like really interesting way to visually kind of show a telemarketing call. And then you even get to the point where, like, he drops down into a bathroom and he's sitting on a toilet right in front of a dude sitting on a toilet talking to him. But the thing that was fascinating was that the very first time, and I think even the second time it happens, Stanfield himself reacts to the drop. Like, what the heck? Like, and that kind of opens up the self-awareness thing. Not so much to, like, a Deadpool end where he, like, breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to the audience, but he seems to be the only person in the movie who's aware of the things that are happening in the movie. And some of them are absolutely absurd, and people act like it's no big deal, and Stanfield really, he kind of represents the voice of the audience, which is constantly going, what? Huh? And all of those things are kind of fleshed out through Stanfield, and that allows Riley to do interesting things with, you know, the camera, and interesting things with what's going on in the shot, that are all really creative, that work really, really well. I could not get enough of Stanfield falling into these different situations with people that he was on the phone with. You know, and then, you know, also, like, like I said, it gives the audience someone to relate to, because it's really hard. I mean, we can relate to all the characters, but when things start kind of getting crazy, and no one else is reacting to the crazy, you're like, why is no one else thinking this is strange? Fortunately, Cash thinks that most of it is strange, and that allows for a real positive connection to him. And that also leads us into that white voice that I talked about. And this was the thing that I thought was just absolutely fascinating about this movie, and that worked so well. And what Riley has ultimately opted to do is, like I said, on that first call, as soon as Cash says, "Hi, this is Cash's Green," the guy hangs up, and then he kind of goes into this bit, and he's not doing very well. And Danny Glover comes over, he's like, "Come here, man. You want me to tell you?" Actually, I think he says Youngblood. So Youngblood gets said a lot in this movie. He's like, "Youngblood, you want to make money here?" He's like, "You got to use your white voice." And Cash's like, "I am using my white voice. Like, I'm speaking really proper." And he's like, No. It's not how you speak or what you speak. It's how you deliver it." And, Danny Glover drops into a white voice. And then Lakeith Stanfield does it. And David Cross's voice comes out of his mouth. And the VO work is so good, man. Like, it's jarring because it's strange to see. Even more jarring with Amari Hardwick when Patton Oswalt's voice comes out of him. If you're a fan of Amari Hardwick, you know him from Power. To have Patton Oswalt's voice come out of that dude really throws you off. But it is so well edited and it's so well acted. But both the audio performance and the physical acting, and all of that has to do with Boots Riley and what he's doing from a directing standpoint, just getting the most out of all of his actors, and really getting to be able to do some interesting things in the scenes and with the cameras. Now, on top of that, the big thing to talk about, of course, is Riley's writing. This script is not only like jarring and funny, but it's extremely poignant, and so is the story. And it just has a lot to say, and it's done brilliantly. And like I said, that first kind of main topic point that we see a ton in this movie is that idea of selling out, and like how much is Lakeith Stanfield's Cassius Green willing to give up to get ahead. And when he starts working at the telemarketing company, he sees this golden elevator, and everybody turns, is like, "Oh man, that's only for like the high roller callers." They call them. I'll get the power callers. That's what they're called. They're called power callers. And like the power callers, they go to the upstairs office, man. That's where they make the big bucks. And it's this like gorgeous looking like elevator, and that immediately gets Cash to kind of get driven. And when he starts selling, he starts having a lot of fun and is really good at it. And then all of a sudden, the ability to start moving up exists. And the higher and higher he climbs, the crazier and crazier the world becomes. And this whole conversation of selling out or not selling out is constantly happening. And it's driven mostly through Tessa Thompson's character, Detroit, who is Cash's girlfriend. She is, like, so pro, like, not selling out, against the man. Like, you got to do it for yourself. She's part of, like, this Left Eye kind of, like group that goes out there and like graffiti walls and stuff. And Cash kind of has to go back and forth with it a lot, but the money is so good. And at the beginning of the movie, he's living in his uncle's like garage, and it's hard to walk away from the money, and that is constantly being brought up throughout the entire movie. And Cash is so reluctant, right? Like he constantly has these situations where it's like there's kind of like this workers versus the bosses kind of deal, and he like goes along with it and wants to be there because he believes in it deep down, but it's gonna directly affect his outcome. Stanfield does such a great job delivering that kind of inner conflict. And it allows Riley to tell two kinds of stories. He's telling this story that's very similar for anybody, man. You want to be successful monetarily. At least, that's a drive for a lot of people, because that just, look, whether you're rich or not, you got to make a decent amount of money, at least out here on the East Coast and like the New York, New Jersey area, just to live like a normal functioning life. So that the desire to, and everybody always wants more money. I mean, who doesn't want more money? But that's a story that anybody can relate to. And, Riley is able to deliver it through the eyes of a young black man that allows you to tell a story that is relatable to a lot of people, but also unique in the perspective of what it is that Cash is going through. And that allows to tell a really unique black story that also hits home and makes sense across, all races. It's not like, that's the cool thing about the story, is it's not just specific to just one group of people. Now, yes, it's obviously things hit more for certain groups. The black audience will definitely relate to a lot of things more than I could possibly relate to them. But you can sit there and go, yeah, no, but like that all makes sense, and like I'm with it, and I love that he's able to tell this story while also, telling a really unique black story from a unique black perspective in this world of telemarketing. And it takes us down a really wonderfully satirical conversation about success. And, achieving it sometimes takes us down a path of sacrificing part of ourselves. And it's visually depicted, so well in that elevator, man. Because the allure, like as soon as you walk in, like the building itself is like whatever, but you see that elevator and you're like, I want to go on that, And then the other great thing, too, is the more and more it starts to elaborate on that kind of concept, the more and more insane the journey starts to get. And the more absurd it is, it kind of begs that question of, like, what is that personal line? Like, when is too far too far? And Cassius has multiple times in the movie where it's like, well, is that too far? Or could I get away with, yeah, all right, like, maybe. And it's just it's a fascinating conversation that I know I've had with myself, and I'm sure everybody at some point has had with themselves. And it really allows you to connect to the movie. And the absurdity allows Riley to play in like a couple other topical areas. And like I said, first is that kind of like, how far are you willing to go to feel comfortable and have ultimate security? And that is directly, depicted by Armie Hammer's character, Steve Lift's company called Worry Free. And essentially, it's, you sign a lifetime contract, and they will provide housing and food and a job, and you're set. You don't have to worry about anything. It's all there, but you sign your contract away to worry free for life. And tons of people do it. The ads are all over the place. It's kind of like a dystopian future out in Oakland. But people don't seem to have a problem with it. And like, or at least there are lots of people that don't have a problem with it and are signing up, but then there's obviously a large group of people in our cast who are like, you're essentially like creating okay slavery. And what's really interesting is in the commercials and stuff, a lot of the people that we see are front and center are white. And now that I think about it, are they all? It's not like the worry-free push is to the black community. I want to say it's a diverse cast, but the one guy that we see multiple times is a white guy. And it's kind of building this. It makes you want to see what the actual worry-free stuff looks like once you do sign on. Because is it you're trying to trick people in or not? And it's play, and it's just this interesting concept for a company of like, well, and it again drives that conversation. And Armie Hammer just does an excellent job playing Lift, and we'll get to him. But the company, it just, yeah, man, it drives that narrative of like what is your soul worth to be comfortable? And that's a fascinating concept to talk about. The second thing is the idea of feeling that deep down anything that makes billions of dollars is probably got something shady going on. It's this kind of feeling that like anytime you watch or you hear about these massive companies, like deep down you go to like your movie roots and you're like, yeah, man, like some super evil genius is running this company. And the movie plays on that kind of concept in what Armie Hammer is doing as this kind of super evil genius. And he doesn't present himself that way. But when you see what they're doing, you literally go, man, like that's like evil genius in a, like, bad dude in a movie comes up with that scheme, and it's the concept of this is not a movie, in the movie world, it's not a movie, like this is actually happening. And it's a fun place to play, to boost the absurdity of the movie that gets just more and more ridiculous laughs, while at the same time talking about really poignant things. Now the funniest stretch of the movie, comes from Cash working at the telemarketing company and using his white voice. And it's something that certainly talks, to the perception of, reality being, how the tone of a person's voice really can cut out what they're actually saying. It's the fact that, like, when Cash talks normally, even though he's saying everything correctly and not like in slang terms or like ghetto terms, he's talking, like a proper white guy. That isn't enough. It's the tone in which it's delivered. And when he's flipped to the white voice, all of a sudden everybody wants to buy what you're selling. And it is interesting because that's a thing in life. Like, if you're good enough at BSing and you deliver it correctly, people will buy into what you're talking about. I mean, there is one person that, like, is fairly prominent, like, now, that kind of does stuff like that, where it's like, I just keep saying stuff, and eventually people will think it's real. And I love that it's, there's that concept, right, where it's like, if I just keep saying the same thing over and over again, people will believe it. But also the way in which I say it. Like, if I say it like, hey, man, I didn't do that. I mean, that's not... me doing that ain't a bad thing. Some people will buy into that. And it's just hysterically... delivered through David Cross speaking for Lakeith Stanfield. And it also is, the fact that, also that black perspective of, a lot of people that get afforded the opportunity to even do that, a lot of times are white. And that also plays into the voice. And the thing that I thought was interesting is, like, that's easy to pick up watching the movie, but Lakeith Stanfield actually, had slightly different feelings to what he thought that meant, and what the white voice meant to him, and that also kind of adds an interesting layer to this whole movie, where he says it's more about one feeling at ease and comfortable in one's skin, and one feeling as if they are part of the majority, and in the world that we kind of live in, that opportunity is afforded almost all the time to white people and not necessarily to everybody, kind of feeling like you're part of that majority. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's an even better way to, like, describe what I was trying to say in a really terribly put way. So, like, that's just fascinating. And I love that you're getting that from the actor himself, which means everybody that's involved in this movie gets what Boots Riley's trying to do. And the conversation also takes Cash on a journey where the way people think stereotypically of the sound of his white voice physically think of him differently, right? So, like, the way he's able to just sell because he's using his white voice, when he gets up to, like, to meeting Armie Hammer, and, like, he's up, like, working with... Now, he doesn't work for Worry Free, but Worry Free is one of their clients. And when he's talking to Armie Hammer, you start realizing that now, like, people see him, and because he's black, they all think that he's got to have a ghetto story, like, oh man, you're from Oakland, you got to have a good hood story, or, oh man, you're black, you must be able to rap. And it's this concept of, like, this entire room full of people expecting just pure entertainment to flow out of Lakeith Stanfield's Cassius Green's mouth. And in both situations, minor spoiler, Green doesn't react the way you would think he does. And when he tries, it doesn't come out too well, and he ends up bailing himself out by giving the people what they want, even though it doesn't matter what's actually being said. And that whole stretch is absolutely hysterical. And it's the thing that I think Boots Riley just pulls off the best in his writing, is this whole use of that concept for Stanfield's character. And it really just kind of, again, adds to the absurdity and adds to the hilarity. But it's that energy and the visual depictions of all of these things in the movie that just generate tons of laughs, and they generate really thought-provoking conversations. So I can't say enough good things about what Boots Riley did with this movie. Now, to the acting. And the acting in this movie, like I said, is great, man. Lakeith Stanfield was just the perfect guy to deliver this material, because he has the ability to come off really kind of awkward, very much so in that situation when he's talking to Armie Hammer and this, like, group of people, but he can switch it to that cool confidence that plays so well when he's talking with his white voice. And he's able to go back and forth between those two worlds so well, while also really externally showing you an internal battle that he's having with himself the whole movie. Like, you can visually see it on him, and it's so impressive from that standpoint. And then the delivery of just the lines, he's so believable. You really like just buy into everything that Stanfield is doing in this movie. And like I say, he delivers great physical comedy. Every time they drop him into a room and you actually see the physical drop, the way he reacts to things is just so funny and so natural, right? Like, it's the thing that I said, like, the audience can immediately connect with that, because it's like, yeah, like, whoa, wait, he can understand? Like, that's, because it's jarring when you see it, and the fact that it's jarring for him makes it, like, more relatable and easy to connect to, and it's delivered so well by Stanfield. And I love the way he plays the self-aware card, where he does it just enough where he's constantly towing that line but never crossing it, where, like I said, he never breaks the fourth wall and outright talks to the audience, even though I think he is speaking on behalf of the audience at certain times in this movie. I also love how he's able to, like, lie and embellish things on his resume at the beginning of the movie to get the job. And the way that plays out is, like, hysterical. And again, it's like you just see a bunch of different variations of Cash and the way he reacts depending on situations he's in. He's very funny and just super talented. And like I said, this is a guy to keep your eye on. I've seen him now in 3 movies, and 2 movies and a TV show. And of all 3 places that I've seen him, fantastic work. Tessa Thompson also riding that role of doing really good things, and she continues to deliver really solid performances. She's the perfect polar opposite to Cash, and the way that he's kind of awkward and unsure of himself because he doesn't know, like, which way to fall. Tessa Thompson's Detroit is firmly planted in the ground. Like, this is where I stand, and it's constantly pushing and combating what's going on with Cash. And, as Cash, finds reasons to succeed, which is mainly to try to impress her, Detroit becomes more and more turned off by Cash because he's started to kind of, sell out and give parts of who he is, up for monetary gain. And, like, at one point in the movie, she goes, "You were more interesting before you had this job." And it's a great dynamic, and she just delivers these really, really solid, poignant conversations with Cash that kind of drive that whole conversation. And like I said, she joins an activist group called the Left Eye Movement. And she helps orchestrate a strike at work. So it's like literally everything that could possibly slow down. The Left Eye Movement is attacking Worry Free, and the strike at work. All of these things are directly conflicting what Cash is trying to do in the movie, and what he's ultimately trying to do is trying to impress Detroit, which is kind of funny when you look at it that way. But where she really shines her brightest is during an art gallery scene. She's kind of been working on this art gallery, and all these people come out, and Cash stops by, and he's like, "Oh man, this is awesome." But then she does a live performance, like art performance, that is wow. Like, it's in your face, like, wow. And again, very, very poignant visual imagery to the story that Boots Riley is telling. And I loved everything you got out of Tessa Thompson in this movie. She does a really, really good job. I also loved Amari Hardwick in this movie. So nice to see him, having fun and, like, really pulling off a great acting performance outside of the show Power. And like I said, this is both with him and Stanfield. Just so impressed with how but it's even more so with Amari Hardwick, because I think he only actually uses his voice once it's like 2 lines, and that's it. Otherwise, he is strictly being VO'd by Patton Oswalt the entire movie, which makes his performance so impressive because, like I said, that's the most drastic voice difference, and it works. And a lot of that is because of the way Amari Hardwick is able to deliver the material and what he does with it. It makes it so believable, even though it's not his voice. It's really impressive to watch. And then, of course, our 2 VO guys, David Cross and Patton Oswalt, are just absolutely fantastic. Both of them did some fantastic voice work in this movie. They're so on point with all of their comedy. All of their timing and everything is just delivered so well, just from the voice standpoint. And because of what they're able to do with their voices, it gives both Stanfield and Hardwick stuff to play with that works out really, really well in the movie. So I absolutely love them. And then Armie Hammer, man. I mean, the guy is just on a roll right now. He plays Steve Lift just so well. Like, there is this crazy to his eye that is there that, like, Stanfield can see and that we can see, but, like, everybody else is, like, completely oblivious to it. And it's like the way he does it, it's like it's not there, but you can see it deep down. And every once in a while he brings it. And just the things and the way he runs the conversation that he has with Stanfield, their chemistry is so good, man. They both bounce and play off each other really well. I was just really impressed with Armie Hammer's delivery. Because his delivery is so good, it helps buy into the absurdity of his character story and just what you're seeing unfold at that point anyway. Then our like kind of minor, like kind of less screen timed like supporting cast are also all fantastic. Jermaine Fowler plays one of Cash's close friends that helps him get the job that he ultimately gets at the telemarketing place. And he's that guy, he's that friend that's like really stupid, like naturally, but every once in a while like says something poignant out of nowhere. And Fowler nails that so well in the movie. Like, he's completely clueless to some things, and you're just like, oh, man. And it's funny. The way he delivers it is really funny. But he has an unbelievably poignant moment with Stanfield where Cash and Salvador, Cash and Sal have this conversation. You're like, wow, I didn't expect that to come out of Fowler's mouth the way his character's been going. So he does a really nice job and brings a lot to a little. Same with Terry Crews. He's in it even less. I think he pops up twice. But for me, it's just always nice to see Terry Crews, and it's even nicer to see Terry Crews with hair. But like I said, man, I mean, very, very little to do, but shows up. Like, it doesn't look like he's phoning it in. With the few lines he has, he really delivers them. Same with Danny Glover. Does a really good job in the spots where he pops up, and he's the first person to do the white voice, and his VO stuff is really good also. And speaking of white voices, I also forgot, I completely forgot, Lily James has a white voice for Detroit's, like her British voice that she uses during her performance, and her VO work really, really good as well. And again, the editing, you don't even realize, like, I forgot. Like, I didn't realize at the time, and I was like, oh, wow. And then just now, also forgot. But Danny Glover, does a really good job. And Stephen Yoon also, who plays Squeeze, who becomes, like, one of the core group between Cash, Detroit, Sal, and Yoon, they kind of commute all together. He's the guy who's really pushing for the strike and for, like, equal rights and, like, fair pay and all this stuff that's going on in the office. He's the guy kind of leading that charge, he brings a lot to that. He's a lot of fun on screen, and his character brings some interesting dynamics to the movie with his story. Almost done, man. This cast is huge, but my favorite of the supporting group, and this is just because I love him in Sense8. He plays Bug. Michael X. Summers is fantastic in this movie. He is just a ball of fire at all times. I don't know if I've ever seen him in a moment where he can't make you laugh or smile. And he's great, man. His chemistry with Stanfield on screen is fantastic. His character is kind of like Cash's boss, and they have a scene together where it's kind of like a montage of them high-fiving. That's so funny, and you really gotta watch. I mean, you gotta watch both of them because they're both great, but really watch Summers' performance during that, because his facial expressions will just like have you rolling in the aisles. And I was so glad to see him show up, because he's just so fun anytime he does anything. The other thing that I thought was interesting too is Hardwick's character as like no actual name. Every time they go to say his name, it gets bleeped out. So he's Mr. Boop. It's the only thing I could not put together in the movie, is why that was always happening. So if any of you know why they were always bleeping out Hardwick's character's name, please hit the comments and let me know, because I have exhausted myself and said all I have to say about this film without spoiling things. I guess the way we can end it too is the twist at the end is shocking, to say the least, but don't let it knock you off the horse. Let it knock you off balance, because it's supposed to. But ride with it and then think about what it's actually saying, and I'm telling you, it works. And it's really, the second time around, it's really, really funny. So that's it, man. That's all I can say without spoiling anything. I might do a spoiler review just so I can talk about the one thing in this movie that I can't talk about, because it also features an actor who's rather well known, a little Mr. Forrest Whitaker. So if you want to find out what Forrest Whitaker had to do in Sorry to Bother You, be on the lookout for a spoiler review. So that's it, man. That's all the Seaman's got to say about Sorry to Bother You. Now it's your turn. Like I said, if you know why Hardwick's character's name is bleeped, please leave that in the comments. If you've seen the movie, please let me know what you thought. No spoilers, though. And if you haven't seen it, have I enticed you enough to, like, even if it's the most absurd thing you've ever seen in your life, that will maybe, like, scar you slightly, like, from what you see, ride with it, man. It's worth it. Like, just, and let me know, like, if you're turned off by something like that, or if something like that intrigues you, because it's certainly, if I wouldn't have known about this, like I said, I like not knowing, it totally catches you off. But if someone would have told me about it and I went into it, I would have been more intrigued, definitely, by the movie. So please leave all your comments down below. And as always, if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the Seaman Cinema Sit Down, I am the Seaman, and I'm signing off. Peace, my Aquasapiens! Hey, what's going on, everybody? Seaman here, letting you know that the fun don't have to stop. If you want, you can check out a video like this one or this one just by clicking on them. And if you hit that guy, you'll subscribe so you can stay up to date with everything the Seaman's doing and how he doesn't talk well.